years. My understanding or my belief is that that warming is probably almost exclusively a natural occurrence, to the extent that any other man-made activity has impacted it, which it likely has in some respect. It's not significant and certainly isn't leading to catastrophic planetary collapse or whatever it is that they're saying. And so I think that, you know, we go through these cycles in our nation. It was a population bomb in the 1960s, then it was global cooling, and then it was global warming. Then when the planet warmed and then cooled, then it was climate change. And in my view, a lot of this has to do with politics rather than science, and it's the politics of the environmental left, who really is an anti-capitalist, anti-American movement, trying to move us further and further away from capitalism and closer away to sort of a statist type viewpoint, which I think they favor. So that's my view with respect to that. Now, we have incredible natural resources in this country that aren't being tapped. A great example is ANWR.
Sure.
When Congressman Kirk originally voted for cap and trade, he said the reason he did it is because it would help wean us off of foreign oil production. And I said to him, well, if that's true, which is a noble thing, to get off of the reliance on foreign oil, how come you won't agree to drill in ANWR? How come you won't agree to drill off the coasts? And so recognizing that, he moved his position and came up with a new reason for why he voted for it. His new reason is that his district wanted it. I've polled his district, they don't. So I think it's because he's tied to Exelon and the environmental left, and that's why he voted for it. But in any event, I think we need to use our natural resources here in an environmentally sound way. And what does that mean? Drilling in ANWR, off the coast, nuclear, incentivizing private business with tax relief, capital gains reductions, whatever private incentive the government can give to private lines of business to research and develop biofuel technology, wind and solar, whatever. I mean, I'm in favor of energy independence. I'm in favor of new technologies. I just don't think that the government does a very good job of incentivizing anybody to do that. All the government does is punish folks for being in the line of business that we're in. But I do think it's important that we investigate that, and I think if you let the American business person, the American ingenuity and investor, and of course the American worker get at that, we're going to see stuff come online that'll be productive.
Okay. Let's move to immigration.
Sure.
I want to get your thoughts on if you believe first amnesty should be given to people that are here already, and if so, why? If not, why? And then the second one is what do we do about immigration? What should be the policy?
People should not get amnesty. I'm a product of immigrants just like every other person in this country. My great-grandparents and grandparents came here from Italy and Ireland respectively, and I think that we need to welcome people to our shores and continue to do that. It's part of the American experience. It's a huge part of what makes us great. However, as we invite folks to our shores, we need to ensure that they follow our laws. And so folks who have come here illegally need to go back to their country of origin and come through the process legally so that they can have a path to citizenship. At the same time, we need to give them a path to citizenship that's reasonable. We need to get the bureaucrats out of it. One of the real problems that we have with immigration, in my view, has to do with border security, and not just so that we can be freed from the economic influence of what the low labor cost does, or folks being here against our laws, but a loose nuclear weapon getting across our borders from Pakistan through Afghanistan or somewhere else is the existential threat of our time, in my opinion, which is why I think the surge policy is so important, to make sure that Afghanistan doesn't devolve and that a nuclear weapon doesn't get out of Pakistan. And so border security isn't just an idea of immigration because of our immigration laws or so we can protect the American worker, but because it's a national security situation as well. I think we need to crack down on businesses that hire illegal aliens. Folks want to come here, they want to work. People give them a place to work, they're going to come here and work. So we have to crack down on those folks. And if they are hiring illegal aliens, they should be fined. They should be paying fines. And if they do it repeatedly, they should be heavily fined or their business shut down.
Okay. I want to switch to legislation now. So whether they've been Republican or Democrat Congresses and Senates over the past, call it 8 years, it seems that large spending bills have occurred, especially ones that wouldn't pass normally if they were on their own, but they were tied to other spending bills. So you have omnibus spending bills, and you have what people call pork or earmarks. Wanted to get your thoughts on that, and wanted to know if you're elected senator, what you would do in those regards.
Nothing worse than earmarks. Nothing worse than having a bill that attaches something else to a bill that's unrelated. I think that practice needs to stop. My opponent, Mark Kirk, has finally come out against earmarks after having taken millions of them over the first 8 years he was in Congress. He gets ready to run for the Senate. People are screaming about high spending, and he says, oh, I don't want to take earmarks. This is the kind of politician that he is. I think earmarks are a terrible practice. I think attaching legislation to unrelated bills is a bad practice, too. I'll give you an example. Mark Kirk supported hate crime laws, which I think are divisive and unconstitutional. He co-sponsored a hate crime law. All it does is pit groups against each other. I think all Americans are equal. It's a tool the Democrats use to consolidate political power. Okay. And that bill passed the U.S. House of Representatives because it was tied to a war appropriations bill, if you can believe it. Right. And so this is the type of practice, okay, you want us to fund your military? Pass our hate crimes bill. That practice has got to stop. So when I go to Washington, D.C., I will pledge to not take earmarks, and the folks that want those goodies here are going to have to live without them. And if the consequence of that is that I don't get reelected in 2000, and what would it be, 16, then so be it.
Okay. Well, would you commit to reading every bill before you voted on it?
You know, I would commit to trying reading every bill before I voted on it. The problem is they're giving you 2,500-page bills. Now, thankfully, a senator has a staff, and I've already got good folks around me that I think I'm looking to be on my staff who can help consolidate that information. But absolutely, if I can get through a bill, you know, sometimes they give you 72 hours to read a 2,000-page bill. I'll read it. The problem is, I hope I understand a lot of it. I'm a smart guy. I was a lawyer for a long, long time. I understand legislation, but these bills are outrageous. And that practice is what's really got to stop. So I'll commit to do everything I can.
Let's talk about that a little bit. What would you do to propose, like if you could, and you could propose some sort of legislation, and one of the things we have heard is, you know, the Constitution can be written on basically 7 pages of paper, the entire Constitution, yet a bill would be 1,800 to 2,500 pages long. Would you be in favor of any sort of thing that essentially says that every bill must pass on its own merit and has to be specific to the subject and topic at hand? In other words,
absolutely.
Healthcare shouldn't have been one giant bill. It should have been, if you wanted to reform insurance industry, you got a bill for that. If you want to reform some sort of Medicaid system, you got to do that. What are your thoughts on that, on that kind of legislation?
My thoughts on that would be terrific in practice. My fear, of course, is that the special interests are so entrenched. You know, the reason why these bills are so large is because there are literally pockets of each bill that are, you know, payouts to the lobbyists that are in Washington, D.C. So a bill gets to be 2,500 pages because 400 pages is for the insurance industry and 300 pages is for Planned Parenthood, and, you know, and on and on and on. Right. So no, I think that would be great. I think our laws need to be, you know, a 100-page piece of legislation is complex enough, I have to tell you. Yes. So we need to allow, and the fact that the folks can't go and download something and read it and be engaged, or have to spend 3 or 4 weeks of their lives trying to catch up on something, is too bad. So I would support that type of stuff.
Well, let me tie 2 things to that. One is term limits. What do you feel on term limits?
I actually came out in support of term limits. I pledged to serve only 2 terms. And the reason I do that is this. As envisioned, we were supposed to be citizen legislators, right? So you'd have folks who were farmers or business people or whatever they were, teachers, whatever they did in life, doctors, and then they'd go and they'd spend some time in Washington, D.C. Representing the folks, and then they'd come back home, and that would be that. And I think that's what we got to get back to again. I found it ironic the other day. I saw that Chris Dodd is not running for re-election, and the ticker at the bottom on Fox News said, Dodd not seeking 6th term or something like that. I'm thinking to myself, this guy's been a United States Senator since I was 10 years old. It's crazy. John Kerry and John McCain ran, got their nominee. Great thing, right? You're the nominee of your party for president, an honor, an incredible accomplishment, and then you lose, and then you go right back to the United States Senate. It makes no sense to me. And there are plenty of good folks all across this great nation, all across this state who can do this job. It's part of the value proposition for my campaign, which is to say, look, it's time for some new blood. Have I ever been in politics before? No. Does that mean I can't be an effective United States Senator? No, I'll be a very effective United States Senator, because you don't have to be a career politician to be a good senator. It isn't how it was envisioned, and it shouldn't be how it is now.
Okay. Well, you mentioned something earlier, and I want to get your take on that. I mean, there is an incredible power with special interest groups and lobbyists in Washington. Could there be anything that you could propose or you would want to do to try to curb that stranglehold that they seem to have on our Congress and Senate?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do. You know, my personal commitment, I say it on the trail all the time because it's absolutely true. I'm beholden in this campaign and in my life to the people of Illinois, my family, and God. And it'll be that way from now until the day that I die. The problem is that folks want to get reelected.